Decimal. Oké, dank u. Test, test. Test, test, test. Test. Test in 3, test in 3, test in 3. Test in 3, test in 3. Oké, dat komt dus goed.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody had a good coffee break, and welcome also to those of you joining into our live web stream today. Welcome to Brussels and to the 5th Annual European Palm Oil Conference, and we are now getting started with session 2. We've called this one Reviewing Commitments and Showcasing Progress in the EU. So this session is obviously to get an idea how things are advancing here in Europe on the demand side with regard to palm oil, and in other words, what is happening in terms of initiatives and how effective they are at the moment. I think we had a few stragglers in on the morning session, so I'm actually going to defer to Michael, our Buzzmaster. For anyone who maybe didn't get in on the practice run, we'll just give you a quick run through to warm everybody up so that we're ready for the question session at the end.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everybody. For those of you who are already logged on, you might just want to refresh your screen. For the others that came in late in the session, you might have seen that we have this tool that we're using. It's called Buzzmaster. We can ask you questions, but also you can ask the speakers questions. So please take out your smartphones, those people that came in late for, I'm sure, very good reasons, and follow the next 3 steps. You take out your phone, you go to the Wi-Fi settings of your phone, Wi-Fi settings, you connect to the Buzzmaster network. Once you're connected to the network, you open your browser. You have to wait a few seconds until it connects with the Buzzmaster network. You open your browser and you surf to buzzmaster.nl. That's buzzmaster.nl. Once you're there, you'll be asked to type in your name. Please do so. And then you press enter and you'll appear on the screen. So we have 83 logged in. Yeah. And if you then move your name across the screen, your name will move across the screen. It's kind of magic. Now, so we'll give you just, we'll leave this going up. I'll repeat the steps so you can do it. If you're sitting next to somebody who's logged in before, you can ask them. I'll repeat real quick. Go to the Wi-Fi settings of your phone. Connect to the Buzzmaster network. Once you've connected to the Buzzmaster network, open your browser. That's Chrome or Safari or Internet Explorer, if that still exists. And you type in buzzmaster.nl, buzzmaster.nl. You type in your name and you're on the screen. We'll be having questions to you, but more importantly, you can use the opportunity to ask questions to the speakers. You can do this while they're giving their presentation so that afterwards we can address 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the questions depending on time.
As many as we manage to get in, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael, for that review. Well, moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker for this session is Joost Oorthausen, and he is CEO of the IDH, that's the Sustainable Trade Initiative. Back in 2015, the IDH, together with the Netherlands Oils and Fats Industry, established the ESPO project, the European Sustainable Palm Oil Project, to stimulate the uptake of more sustainable palm oil by the European private sector. So Joost will be presenting the results of their 2nd annual monitoring report, as done by the ESPO project, and give us the latest data on the uptake of SPO here in Europe and propose the next steps to be taken in the context of this exercise. So give him a warm welcome, Joost Oorthausen.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to be here in this lovely place. I was quite impressed with the presentations so far, especially from Malaysia and from Indonesia. It shows those 2 countries are really showing leadership, and I think that's the best way forward. I was specifically impressed with the Malaysian INDC commitment to 45% reduction. That's probably much higher than any European country. So we can only be very humbly applaud that. And it's also very true that the Indonesian president is making a huge effort to try to get deforestation and peat fires under control in Indonesia, which is not an easy task. So lots of salute for that as well. I think we should get a little bit out of this propagating palm oil against, attacking palm oil thing. I don't think that's helpful at all. We need to be honest about the issues, and we need to try to address them in a serious fashion. I don't know if you saw the Global Forest Watch report of 2016, and tropical global deforestation is up by 51%, ladies and gentlemen, in 1 year. So we're not even close to the beginning of trying to get tropical deforestation under control. That's not just related to palm oil, it's also related to soy and beef and cocoa, etc. Especially in Africa, tropical deforestation is now ongoing at massive rates because more people are coming to the play, and as a result, forests are being, agricultural. About a bit more than 50% of total European imports. It came about in 2015, as it was already said. Frans and myself, we got together said, okay, what can we do to support this drive towards accelerating sustainable palm oil into Europe? And then there was a lot of energy within the industry to start working on that. So we united, we got this ESPO project launched, and we used that as an input to the Amsterdam Declaration of 2015. And so that's that moment the government said, we want to drive sustainable palm oil imports. This is basically the industry effort to work with or for that Amsterdam Declaration on the private sector side. Many countries or many industry associations from Europe have joined. I think more than 90% of all palm oil is represented by those industry associations. So it's basically nearly the whole of the industry in Europe that is behind this effort to drive towards sustainable palm. The effort is 100% by 2020. So we are 3 years out. Caubisco, Fediol, Maasje are strong partners of us, and all those national industry associations, those national initiatives are partners of ESPO. What we also found out is that 100% of the refiners in Europe have made policies on no deforestation, no peat, and no exploitation. The numbers also say 83% of UK refiners, so I don't know if somebody from the UK, but you have to do something there in the UK. And we are working towards RSPO or RSPO equivalent, but this initiative very strongly recognizes also the legal certificates of both Indonesia and Malaysia. This is a bit of a side story before I go to the numbers. What is important to recognize, we believe, is that if we drive towards sustainable palm oil, that we do it in a meaningful way. The problem with certification is that before you know it, you get what you want. So it might actually be true that in 2 years or 3 years, 100% of palm oil coming to Europe is certified against a sustainability target, right? But if that comes from areas that have nothing to do with deforestation, we have just created a nice niche for the European market, right? It doesn't really stop what you try to stop, which is trying to de-link commodity production from deforestation. So what we believe is we need a landscape approach or a jurisdictional approach to link these efforts towards really stopping deforestation. So in landscapes of high-risk areas, of forest areas, to get it right there, that's what basically needs to happen. So we are propagating towards an area-based approach where you link demand from Europe into high-risk forest areas and support the local authorities and support the local industries to do the right thing and, you know, grow their agriculture, build the livelihoods, build the smallholder livelihoods, but at the same time stop deforestation in those areas, right? Okay. This is also relevant. We incorporated the Green Fund earlier this year. It was announced at the World Economic Forum in Davos by the Norwegian Prime Minister. And it's a fund that has been set up especially to try to incentivize investments in the agricultural space and incentivize companies to do the right thing. So the money that is brought by the fund is rather sweet in its terms. The conditionalities on the green side are rather tough. So companies are required to develop a landscape protection plan in return for that sweet money. It's supposed to become a rather big fund. At the moment, Norway puts money into it, Unilever is putting money into it. We expect more companies and more investors to put money into it to influence green financing, if you like, in the space of palm oil, but also other crops. So it's for Brazil, Indonesia, and different parts of Africa. Now to the report. Palm oil production obviously globally is going up steadily, which is also very clear is that a lot of it, nearly over 80% comes out of Malaysia and Indonesia. But Frans was just telling me that also Colombia is now increasing in its production, and Colombia becomes a key trading partner for Europe as well. Imports So if you look at this graph, then you can see that the EU does 70% of global imports, China 11%, India being the number one. So the EU is important, but going back to my earlier statement, it doesn't help if we start to create a world where the sustainable or certified palm goes to Europe, and then nothing really changes in the larger picture. So it's important what we do in Europe, but let's not forget that we are a small player, and an increasingly small player, obviously, given the population trends and the middle class trends. Here is a break of within Europe. So you can see there that Germany, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands are by far the largest importers of palm oil in Europe. For Germany and Netherlands, we are also exporting. I'm Dutch, so that's why I'm saying we here. We're also exporting to Poland, for instance. Okay. This is probably the most important slide on the report. So we are now at 69%. So 69% of European palm oil imports on the food, feed, and oleochemical side is now against a form of certification, a sustainability certification. So we are at, say, 70%, which is pretty good. Last year, our numbers were not so accurate yet, so we find it it's a bit risky to say how much did we improve in 1 year. We like to say that cautiously we would think that at least 10% increase over last year, which is a good and positive sign. What is also very interesting comes out of the data is that 2/3 now of those certified sustainable palm oil imports are with mass balance or segregated. So what you see is a big drop in book and claim and a large increase into mass balance and segregated, meaning European industry and European consumers are moving towards more direct sourcing, knowing where your palm oil comes from kind of systems, which I think is encouraging if we want to propagate this area approach and link our imports directly to those areas where it matters. This is an overview of the progress. You can see more, you can read more detail there in the report. Generally speaking, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and UK are clearly having it under control, basically. They are moving towards this 2020 target, making good progress or are nearly there. So that's the good sign. There needs to be a bit more work done still in Italy, Sweden, Spain, and Norway, both on getting better data. So those data are not yet available in the same kind of detail, which is not so strange because some of those countries and these initiatives also started later. But also we need a bit more buzz around this initiative so that also the industry there and the retailers there will pick it up. Maybe one thing I forgot, let me go back one slide. 60% is only, so 70% is, of the import is sustainable, only 60% is sold as sustainable. So that tells you a little bit that we need to do a bit more work also on the consumer end to recognize sustainability in the sales of the products throughout Europe. Next steps, how do we move forward? Well, we need, one important thing is we need more uniform measurements. So what we hope to do is work with the national initiatives for the coming year to get a uniform monitoring reporting system. We should do a bit more work in those countries that I just mentioned, and we should keep on having that close dialogue with the Amsterdam Declaration, with the national governments, so the government end of the spectrum in this initiative. So I hope that was useful, and I hope I didn't take too much time, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joost. If I could ask you perhaps to just take a seat over here, and we'll save time afterwards getting all of our guests on stage for the question period. Thanks very much for those honest words at the outset, and obviously getting the deforestation issue under control is the question for a number of sectors and not just for palm oil. It is a general problem that we have to address. So our next speaker, carrying right on from there, we heard about the Amsterdam Declaration in Joost's presentation. Peter de Koning is Senior Advisor to the Amsterdam Declaration in support of a fully sustainable palm oil supply chain by 2020. As you probably noticed on Joost's slide up there so far, 7 countries have signed on, and Peter is going to explain why the group was set up and give us the update on its current status. So Peter de Koning, where is he? There he is. Give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As said, my name is Peter de Koning, and I represent the Secretariat of the Amsterdam Declarations, signed now by 7 countries. Before I start explaining a little bit about the Amsterdam Declarations, I would like to ask for a show of hands. I have 2 questions. Whom of you have heard about the Amsterdam Declarations? So that's the majority, but not everybody. Who know what the Amsterdam Declarations are about? Okay, thank you. That's a bit similar to the first raising of hands. Maybe a little bit less, but that's... so I can skip maybe or walk through the slides a bit faster because of the limitations of time that we have. The Amsterdam Declarations were launched in December 2015 and at that point in time signed by 4 countries, and later on 3 other countries joined. Now, today, we are 7 countries. But why? Why did this whole process start? And that had to do with a report launched in 2013 by the European Commission, where that clearly showed that there is a strong link between agricultural commodity expansion and deforestation and the trade with the European Union. In this graph, you can see that 80% of deforestation, which was traded with the European Union, was closely linked to 3 commodities: soy, palm oil, and cocoa. The main driver of deforestation at that point in time was beef, but not that much beef is sold to the European market. And another thing is that deforestation is 24% of the climate change problem. And in December 2015, when we launched the Amsterdam Declaration, so that was at the same time as the Paris Climate Agreement. And there's a close connection between the climate ambitions that we have and this Amsterdam Declarations and the ambitions that we have in this declaration. The group of countries that now signed the Amsterdam Declarations represent 74% of all palm oil import into the European market. And I listed some countries here. As we know, Indonesia and Malaysia are the top 2 countries, but there are others as well that are responsible for trading with the European Union and our countries. So what is the Amsterdam Declaration about? There are 2 of them. And one is on sustainable palm oil, and the other one is on deforestation. We now try to combine those, and the main aim of these Amsterdam Declarations is to promote sustainable deforestation-free commodity import by 2020. We are not only focusing on palm oil, but at the moment we also focus on soy and cocoa, and maybe later we will include beef, maybe, paper and pulp, rubber, and that's still something we have to analyze, how relevant it is, the connection to the European market and the connection to deforestation. I think it's good to emphasize as well that the Amsterdam Declarations are not law. They are non-binding political declarations. And by that, I would like to say that we are not going to impose anything. We try to influence developments. And that brings me to the strategy of the Amsterdam Declaration. There are 4 major elements in there. The first one is to facilitate European developments. And for that, we are closely connecting to what's happening in the European Commission. We are in constant dialogue with the European Commission, but we are not replacing what's happening in the Commission and their formal processes. We convey our own meetings, which are informal coordination meetings. We organize multi-stakeholder events every year once. And we try to influence European developments. One example is that, for example, we made a call in the European Commission Agriculture Council in October 11th to voice our support for the development of an action plan on deforestation. Also, there is a call for an action plan on responsible business conduct, which is, in our opinion, also closely connected to what we are doing and try to achieve. The second point is maybe the basis of the whole Amsterdam Declarations, which is working together with the private sector. Together with the private sector, together with NGOs, together with research institutes, we want to promote partnerships. Because partnerships, we believe, are the key to solving the problem. None of these major stakeholders can solve the problem alone. We need each other to solve it. So what are we doing? Well, as explained by Joost, for palm oil we have ESPO. And at the time of signing, the ESPO commitment was closely connected to the Amsterdam Declarations. One cannot exist without the other. And both refer to each other. So we heavily depend on what ESPO is doing, what the private sector under that committee is doing.
Actually a 68% decline. So these numbers really are staggering, and I think now the effort has to be on not just halting that decline, but looking at how we actually start to reverse that. How do we bend that curve back upwards and to restore nature as well? So that's the last Living Planet report that came out in 2016, and the next one will be coming out in 2018. So looking at some of the different levers for increasing demand. Firstly, there's the awareness and understanding of the issue. There's the business case and pressure to act, which I think needs to come from all different directions. And then there's having a clear direction, knowing how to get there and where to go. And of course, the enabling conditions that come around that, which is fantastic to hear things like the Amsterdam Declaration that are really setting up those enabling conditions. And WWF tries to work across all of these different levers to help move the dial on this issue and many others. And one of them that you'll all be very familiar with, of course, is campaigns, which have brought us a long way. And these are campaigns from different organizations. You'll be familiar with some of these hard-hitting campaigns against some of the big palm oil users. And we know that they have sped up, sometimes increased and driven new commitments. So there really is a role for these kind of campaigns and what they've driven. So based on that, many of you may have seen this slide before, but this is how WWF sees our model for change. We know that we have 7 billion plus consumers out there, including all of us in this room, that are consuming products daily with palm oil and many other ingredients in them. And then we know at the bottom end we've got 1.5 billion plus producers. So while we do need to work at both those ends, we really see the power of working in that supply chain where it's between 500 to 700 companies that control nearly 70% of the flow of these materials, including palm oil, and therefore control the choice that the consumers have. So if we can shift that part of the supply chain, which involves all of you here in this room, we can really start having the change we need to see. So one of the things WWF does then is the scorecard, and our first one was done in 2009, and we continue to do scorecards every couple of years, looking at the major users and major buyers of palm oil. And each time the methodology has developed, but it's now nearly been 10 years of actively looking into what commitments, actions, uptake, that companies are doing in this area. And that's something we will continue to do going forward. And as I say, the methodology evolves, so we start adding in new criteria as new issues emerge. And for the first time this year, we were able to put the scorecard in a new format that was really engaging for consumers. Again, building on that awareness raising and clicktivism, which is the sort of at-home activism that people can do, is about on their own computer from the comfort of their home, being able to send a tweet or a letter or an email to their companies, either congratulating them on the efforts they've done for more sustainable palm oil or asking them to do more if they're not currently doing enough. And that's been a really powerful tool for bringing this debate to the populace as well. So for the first time this year, there was the Malaysian and Singaporean palm oil buyers scorecard, where 47 companies across Malaysia and Singapore were scored for the first time ever on their commitments and uptake of sustainable palm oil. And this did a number of things. This helped to facilitate engagement with these new companies that we hadn't maybe engaged with before. It strengthened the position of RSPO in this market and also helped to increase the dialogue with the other schemes operating in this space. And it's opened the door to many conversations that we haven't yet been able to have, as well as showing Europe that it's not just about pressure and activity in Europe, but actually it's about these other countries acting as well. But at the same time, we know we cannot just wait for consumers, and this is across all different markets and all different contexts. We know awareness is low. We know action in store to make responsible choices is difficult and is low. But consumers are expecting companies and governments to do it for them. They don't want to have to go into a store and choose between good palm oil and bad palm oil. They want you to take care of it for them. And I've just put a graph at the bottom here, which looks at a bit of consumer awareness on different logos. And you can see there's good awareness on fair trade, but on RSPO it was very low, actually very similar to one called Eco-Earth, which was a completely fake logo, and people were claiming some awareness of it. So it's just demonstrating that people have heard of the issue of palm oil, but actually knowing what to look for in store and what to do is challenging. So my last slide, just to build on the momentum that we've got, and a bit of a call to action. So we know momentum is building, we know it's strong, it's great to have so many of us here in the room today, but we need to watch out for things like the new no palm oil claims that are coming. What do we do to tackle that? And we know there's now certifications arising in that space. We need to make sure nothing's happening to undermine the current efforts and slow things down. We do not want to see it move to below certification, which I think there is some fear of. And we heard it earlier in one of the opening videos about misinformation, or alternative facts, if you will. How do we tackle that and make sure people are getting the right information? And we need to keep up the pace. I keep hearing at many events recently that it's less than 1,000 days to 2020. It's actually less than 800, so we're really, really running out of time, and we need to keep that pace up. And I call all of you in the room to tell the stories, be honest, be open about the challenges, the issues, what you're going through, and how we can keep up that momentum to make sure consumers know what's happening and that their products don't cost the earth. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Emma Keller from WWF UK. It's not easy to get all of that information into 5 minutes. As you can see, I'm wiggling in my chair down here, but we'll move right along and then we'll have questions at the end. Our next speaker is Olivier Charrier, who spent his entire career working for Ferrero, if I'm not mistaken, which gets top marks in terms of sustainable sourcing. He's had many functions over the years across many geographies, and he's now global president of Nutella. So he's going to tell us about consumer dynamics and a number of other things. I'll let you take it away. Olivier.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to spend a few words on palm oil. Thank you for those who were here before. Very insightful. I found many positive insights, a lot of enthusiasm also, so thank you. The reason why I've been asked to talk to you for a few minutes is twofold. The first one, I've been a general manager for Ferrero in Benelux for the last 5 years, and as such, I was a founding member of the Belgium Alliance for Sustainable Palm Oil. So I'd like to share with you some insights about this experience. And also, as you said, I'm currently a global president of Nutella, and as you might know, Nutella has had its fair share of trouble on palm oil, and I thought you would like to know a little bit more about the reality that I'm going to share with you. And I will end this presentation with a bold proposition on what could be the future of palm oil in Europe. A few words on Nutella very quickly. We use palm oil in Nutella for 3 reasons. One, it gives the right structure to our product because it's semi-solid at room temperature. Second, it's a neutral taste, which enables all the other flavors to really blossom. And the third reason is that it doesn't become rancid over time. So for those who are interested, I can assure you that we will never move away from palm oil. That's the best possible ingredient for our product. There's nothing wrong with palm oil, and we will stick to palm oil for the next 100 years. By the way, we've been using palm oil for the last 50 years. We were one of the early adopters, and we are totally happy with that. Ferrero and palm oil, just to give you a quick snapshot, as you might know, 90% of palm oil produced on this planet is not yet certified. The other 10% is. Out of this 10%, the top part is what we call segregated. You can retrace back to the plantation, or if not, to the mill. We, Ferrero, buy 180,000 tons of palm oil every year, and we are part of this top 4% sourcing. On top of this segregated certification, we have also our own charter in 10 points. I will not cover them now, but just to let you know that we also address deforestation, we address human rights, and things like that. To help us implementing our certification on the ground, we have many partnerships, including TFT on the ground, including also a breakthrough system with Airbus and Starvision, which allows us to control part of our plantations through satellite. It's still a pilot, but the plan is to make it much broader in the future. And I think you will agree with me to say that we are recognized as a best practice by both WWF, 12 out of 12 in your scorecard, and also Greenpeace. So we are very proud of what we do in palm oil, and we are not going to change anything if not for the better. The reason why we thought it was useful to be part of this Belgium Alliance for Sustainable Palm Oil that we were part of creating 5 years ago now are many. First of all, the BASP is a driving force for the industry in Belgium to show the way, to lead the way, and being recognized as a best practice. Belgium is 100% sustainable, out of which 50% is segregated, and the plan for the members is to get to 100% segregated by 2020. So we like to believe that we can give an example to the rest of the industry. We also like to believe that we can make a difference in discussing with local stakeholders, including government bodies. We had a meeting with Minister Margen a few months ago. So we are part of creating a positive dynamic on palm oil. And last point, but probably not the least, we're also very involved in dealing with media and in dealing with consumers, because as much of you know, there are many negative and misleading talks about palm oil in this world, especially in Europe. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that palm oil is responsible for a bit more than 2% global deforestation, but on the other end, it is also attracting 100% of the criticism. If you ask someone in the road in Europe, what is driving penetration in this world, the answer is palm oil, okay? So we think it's important to be part of rebalancing the debate and to have a transparent discussion with also media and consumers on these issues. People often ask me, what does it take to be a kind of best in class in palm oil, in sustainable palm oil? So I'm going to share with you some figures and then a bold proposition. The premium price we pay for palm oil in Ferrero is around 130 euro per ton, which, if you multiply by the quantity of palm oil we buy, will lead to, roughly speaking, 25 million euro extra cost in a year. So someone could say it's a lot. It is a lot, but then if you translate it into the actual cost within our product, for Nutella, for instance, which I know quite well, the impact is 3 cents per kg of Nutella, which is less than 0.5% impact on the consumer price. It's nothing. Now, I ask myself, what would that mean if the whole industry in Europe would apply the same premium price, meaning the same best-in-class kind of approach to its palm oil. This figure includes not only the sustainability, by the way, but also how we mitigate the contaminants. So the cost is the sum of both aspects, because both are very important. So I made a quick calculation. The extra cost per year, based on the current consumption of edible palm oil in Europe, would be around 500 million euro. It's nothing, because it means €1 per capita per year. So basically, we are facing an opportunity with sustainable palm oil, even if you go for the high level, to address many issues at basically no cost. That would be perfect if it was mandatory for everyone. The issue is it's not mandatory, and that's what I've been exposed to when I was part of the Belgium Alliance. You have big companies like us who basically have no option because they are rightly so on your radar. So we have to behave the right way, not forgetting the fact that we also have our ethic. But anyway, we have no choice. I think you said before that 500 companies would drive 70% of palm oil. So these are not the issue. They will get there. Maybe not all of them segregated. Maybe many of them will just remain green certificate, which I think is $5 or $10 per ton, basically not much. The issue is the other 30%. Those small companies who have no brand, who oftentimes work in business to business, so they are not in direct contact with consumers, they deal with retailers, for instance. And these guys, if they decide by themselves to go sustainable, they just become more expensive compared to those who won't become sustainable. So our idea in Ferro is that unless there is, within Europe, a law that says palm oil is sustainable or there's no palm oil, I think we'll still have issues with the 30% remaining small players. They're not bad. It's just that they have no pressure and they have no interest in going for sustainability. One last point. You mentioned before, I think 20% of palm oil worldwide is produced in a sustainable way, some being top, some being less top. Let's also say that only half of these 20 points is actually bought, meaning that in countries where palm oil is produced, people, including small farmers, are trying to produce the best possible sustainable oil, and we don't buy it. So it's not an offering issue, it's a demand issue. So our proposition is to make tomorrow palm oil mandatory in Europe by law, at one condition. It has to be fair, meaning that we don't want palm oil to be the only one on the list, because, again, palm oil is only 2% of the deforestation. Soy has to follow, maize, cattle, to name a few. And secondly, we also need to stop these smear campaigns. You mentioned before the palm oil free. Do you know in Europe how many products are carrying a palm oil free claim? You know, any idea? It's more than 1,500 products in Europe. And I made a quick calculation just in Italy, where there is a very negative buzz on palm oil, as much as France, for instance. If you put together the advertising made by all the players who leverage the palm oil free claim, you come to a media pressure which is 5 times the amount of money spent by Coca-Cola in advertising. So the palm oil free competition is 5 times as powerful as Coca-Cola. So we think if and when palm oil becomes by law mandatory in Europe, the counterpart should be let's ban the palm oil free claims. Then if you look at what this would bring to the party, I've tried to sum up on 4 levels. First of all, that would be great for farmers, because these 500 million euro I was mentioning before, somehow they will go in the supply chain upstream. If it was a tax, it would not go to the supply chain. It would go God knows where. So that would be great for farmers who finally would be rewarded for their effort on palm oil. Secondly, consumers, they would not have to worry anymore about am I doing the right thing or not. It would be obvious, okay? Thirdly, competition. I said before, these misleading claims and smear campaigns would not happen anymore, because there would be no ground anymore. Palm oil would not be a topic for discussion anymore. And last, but certainly not least, it would be great for the planet, and possibly Europe would pave the way to other oils and to other geographies. Thank you very much.
Please take a seat, Olivier. Thank you very much to Olivier Charrier, for an initiator of the Belgian Alliance for Sustainable Palm, and talking about the importance of balancing the debate and also making a plea for a norm on sustainable palm oil. I'm sure there will be lots of questions from the room on that just now. But we will move right along to our final speaker, who is Laura Jungmann, who works in the product integrity team at Ahold Delhaize. So she's responsible for setting and supporting implementation of global policies of AD's critical commodities, including palm and soil, and she's going to talk about the demand for sustainable palm from the retailer perspective. Thank you very much. Take it away, Laura.
Great, thanks everyone. I'm going to try and stick with my 5 minutes, so let's see how that goes. So I work for Ahold Delhaize. We are an international food retailer. We're one of the 10 biggest in the world. We're based in the Netherlands, but we have operations on the east coast of the US, throughout Europe and Eastern Europe, and in Asia. One of the focuses, oh sorry, that was about the company, I forgot to switch. One of the focuses of our sustainable retailing strategy is on product sustainability, and our palm oil commitment fits under that focus area perfectly. If we look at our commitment very briefly, we're looking at, we basically want that 100% of the volume of the palm oil in our own brand products is credibly certified by 2020. When we say own brand products, we're talking about food and non-food. When we say palm oil, we're talking about palm oil, palm kernel oil, any fractions, any derivatives, basically anything that comes from the fruit. What you'll see is that other companies, especially companies linked or retailers linked with the Consumer Goods Forum or the Retailers Palm Oil Group, have commitments that are very similar to this one. If you look at our progress, we're actually right now in the process of crunching our 2017 numbers, so I don't have those for you yet. And we've just gone through a major merger, so that shifted the numbers a bit as well, but we're at about 55% physically certified, so that's mass balanced or segregated, and we cover the rest with credits, and our target to 2020 is to push that mass balance and segregated volume up while bringing the book and claim volume down. When you keep this commitment in mind, what I also want you to keep in mind is the reality for a retailer. So if you think about what we need to actually do to implement this commitment, we're talking about, I think it's estimated that 40 to 50% of processed products actually contain some form of palm oil, palm kernel oil, derivative fraction, etc. That's thousands of products from hundreds of suppliers across dozens of categories. And most of these products in our supply chains anyways contain less than 2% of palm oil, so the volumes are also very small. To actually implement our commitments, we need to reach out to hundreds of suppliers who need to become chain of custody certified and actually source the certified palm oil. In some markets, that's easy, let's say. For example, in the Netherlands, where there's lots of other companies who are already buying sustainable palm oil. But some of the markets where we operate, like Serbia, Romania, Czech Republic, we were actually one of the first companies, or the only company, who are actually asking for this in that market, which means that we have to actually work with our supply chains to set up a physical supply chain. So keep this in mind. It takes time to make this transition to 100% sustainable and to transition to a higher percentage of physically sustainable palm oil for a retailer. What's also important to keep in mind, or keeping the complexity of the situation in mind, is that most consumers and even some companies and NGOs understand palm oil as a black and white issue, as a good versus bad issue. And this is actually a big shame. And basically, as the watchdogs organizations of the world, they're doing a great job, but they are still finding grave social and environmental issues happening in the production of palm oil. And that's a big problem, and that further fuels consumer confusion. So I think what I believe is that until that risk, until those social and environmental issues in the production of palm oil are further reduced, you will continue to see companies proactively investing and looking into palm oil replacements, and the no palm oil claims will continue, and that is something that nobody wants, at least I think nobody in this room. To avoid this, we are fully committed to the RSPO, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, as one of the key standards that we use to implement our commitments. And so to avoid this, what we've done as Ahold Delhaize is taken a leading role in the principle and criteria review that the RSPO is going through right now. So we are leading the retail and food service constituency, and we're basically bringing one clear message to the table, and that's that the standard needs to be improved on the following key topics: on the no deforestation conversation, the no peat conversion, the no burning, and the no exploitation, forced labor, et cetera, conversations. And I think until not only the sustainability standards are strengthened on that, but until that's strengthened in general in the sector, you're going to continue to see these types of problems. But like Ferrero, we're also completely committed to palm oil into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Laura Jungman. And now we have about 30 minutes left for a Q&A, and I think I'll hand over to Michael, because we'll start off with a question probably for the entire audience. Thank you very much.
Can we have Buzzmaster on the screen, please? We have a number of questions that are to a number of you, actually. Thank you. And please take out your phones, and if you have more questions, please pose them. This was a nice one to start with, I think, is to Laura and Olivier. What is the best way forward to balance the negative perception on palm oil with EU consumers? Olivier, you want to start?
Yeah. My view, and that's what I was trying to explain, is that we need new news. We need a breakthrough. We need a discontinuity to make sure that consumers, all stakeholders actually, will reassess their view on palm oil. And unless we become 100% sustainable at the European level, that's not going to happen. And the way to make this happen, to my view, the most efficient one, is to go through a new law, to make it mandatory, full stop. But also to get in return a commitment from government bodies at European and at country level that they would then address all the negative talks that are still happening on palm oil-free claims, smear campaign, and also they would work on other commodities so that palm oil is not suffering from a competition point of view of being the only best in class and forget the rest. So we need new news.
Laura, would you like to, if you could just pass the microphone? Thank you.
From a retailer perspective, I find it very difficult to communicate with consumers about palm oil in general. So I think if a consumer knows about palm oil, then they see it as really either, well, they usually associate it with a negative issue. So I think the best way, I mean, yeah, we need new news, basically. We need more positive stories. We need less negative stories. But yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that, yeah.
Any response from the other panelists? Perhaps to the, yeah, Joost. But I think I have another microphone over here I'll bring for that group. Yeah, great.
Yeah, I would agree with that positive news part. I very much like your thought on a law. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it will be complicated. But let's explore. But waiting for that, I think we need positive news. So that area-based sourcing idea that we put forward, where you actually can showcase in a specific landscapes in West Kalimantan or in Riau or in, that you can actually bring development plus protected forest with heroes of those jurisdictions. If I may, Mato Grosso in Brazil is a very good example. Mato Grosso is a huge state which produces beef and soy. It's one of the biggest agribusiness places in the world. They have made a very, very compelling and ambitious plan. Produce, project, include. So they're going to make a lot of money. They're going to protect and replant massively, and they will include their people in doing it. So taking that leadership by local jurisdictions and sending that message out to the world that we are there to serve the world in a positive way. I think that's what we need. So we need those heroes from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Colombia, that I think at governor level, that put those plans forward, and then we need the industry to back it up.
Okay, thank you. Peter de Koning as well.
Yeah.
Would you
I
like
don't
to
know if
pass?
this works. Does
Yes, it
still work?
does.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah, great. That's easy. But I absolutely agree that we need to improve our storytelling and the connections that there are. If you pick up a newspaper like 2 years ago, then you see in the front page that palm oil is responsible for the extinction of the orangutan, or palm oil is the culprit for all forest fires. And that in reality is not the case. Of course, there are links between those two, but not as is suggested that it's fully responsible. And I think there, what we are talking about, sustainable palm oil, we need more facts, data, etc., where we can show that sustainable palm oil, certified palm oil, is the solution to these problems and get a more nuanced view on all palm oil. And I think there we need to address all these links that are made, that we have facts, and well, we live in a bit of a fact-free society nowadays. But still, I still believe in facts and actual truth. And I think we need to put that forward through stories and through social media.
But it's interesting, we've been talking a lot about, okay, news stories, obviously the need for communication. You've got the Amsterdam Declaration, it's been around for 2 years. You're enhancing visibility and putting the accent on political dialogue, but how exactly are you communicating all of this? And is it happening to an effective enough?
Well, whether it's effective is also up to the audience to decide,
Yeah.
I think. But there are various levels that we work on. One level is the highest political level. When Germany was the chair of the Amsterdam Declaration Group, they brought the issue forward in the G20. And there was a discussion at the G20 on the relevance of sustainable supply chains. So it's the highest level. And that is to include other countries like the United States, like China, like India. And that we have like a common vision with all of us. We have that with the SDGs, but still we have to implement them. And that's a huge challenge, I think. On the lowest level, we very much depend on the NGOs, on the companies, to provide the positive examples, like Joost is telling, to have positive examples from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from other countries on sustainable landscape, what it means for the people.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to get back to this idea of the law, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I see one up here on the screen, and the challenges that this idea of a law would present, obviously, on the producer side. If you could pull out that one from Peter van Dijk there, Michael. Many small farmers have no birth, no land certificate, meaning that they can't get an SPO certification, 100% CSPO, only with fully regulated countries. Could you comment on that, perhaps, Joost?
Yeah, that is a big issue, and that stops. It's very difficult at the moment for smallholders to become RSPO certified. We did quite a big project with Unilever on 20,000 smallholders in North Sumatra. It's kind of the first one at scale. So I was very pleased to hear earlier that Malaysia is now putting money also to invest in smallholder certification in Malaysia. Yeah, that's a key point. We need to solve that. It's very complicated because, yeah, especially in Indonesia, many of the smallholders, and there are so many of them. You're talking about 2 million. Many of them don't have legal land certificates. So somehow, if the Indonesian government can accelerate the ISPO legalization, that would be a major way forward. Yeah.
Are there any comments, perhaps, from the floor? I do have a microphone here. On our discussion so far, do I see any hands shooting up? Or shall we go back to our screen up here? Everybody prefers the Buzzmaster system. Emma, you would like to make a comment. Emma Keller from WWF, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and it's an untold story. I think we don't often tell the human story of palm oil. The consumers will know, they'll hear palm oil, they'll see a dying orangutan in their heads. They won't necessarily realize that actually it's a huge part of economic rural development in these countries. It is helping people get above the poverty line, and I think that's part of the untold story that we need to tell. I think with this, it's also interesting to see the role that companies can play in this. So we're seeing a lot of these big palm oil producing companies knowing that they have huge numbers of smallholders in their supply chain, and knowing that there's a massive yield gap that can be gained. So in productivity that can both help those producers to make more income, stop them needing to convert further, and get them into their supply chain better. So we're seeing these companies take on these extension service roles, acting as the lenders or the advice givers or the procurers of new seed varieties and chemicals, etc. So I think it's about those companies as well stepping up and playing their part to tackle this huge issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Olivier.
I can give our perspective on that. We have in our supply chain currently 36,000 smallholders, driving a bit less than 10% of our volume. It's a lot, so it's also obvious that you can't be bulletproof, but that's a trade-off. So I think it's important to say, even though we are trying to, we will never be perfect. And when we have an issue with our supplier, there are two options. Or you walk away, or you sit down, roll out your sleeve, and find a solution together. So it's also a matter of attitude, being in the right behavior with your supplier, trying to explain what are the do's and don'ts, and fix what's not working properly together. But to put things in perspective, we are dealing in the cocoa supply with 120,000 farmers. So imagine